Welcome to the Misophonia Podcast. This is episode 18. My name's Adil Ahmad, and I have misophonia. So, at the Misophonia Convention last fall, there were a number of striking paintings in the lobby inspired by the struggles of dealing with misophonia. Today, I'm honored to talk to the artist, Laurel, who's actually a college freshman. We talk about her passion for art therapy and how she has used art to help her cope. We dive really deep into her childhood when her miso started. This is a really raw and revealing look at some family loss and family trauma at a young age and how it intertwined with her growing awareness of her own misophonia. We also get into what her therapists worked on with her, how miso has affected school more and more over the years, and also her role now as a sort of miso-mentor to help younger folks coming up deal with their struggles. I think we should all aspire to be good miso-mentors. You can check out her Instagram for photos I took of her art at our Instagram, Misophonia Podcast. But you should also follow her on Instagram at actions.that.echo. That's actions.that.echo with some dots in the middle. You can check out our show notes for a link. Anyways, here's my conversation with Laurel. Laurel, welcome to the podcast. Good to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's good to be here.
Great. How'd you find out about the podcast? I'm always curious.
Oh, I think we met at the Misophonia convention, and you got my email, so you emailed me.
Yes, right, of course. Okay, and so you're based in Denver, I believe, right?
Yes, I am. Well, I'm living in Durango right now for school, but I'm from Denver.
Got it. And I believe you did the amazing artwork that was in the lobby area.
Yes, yeah, thank you.
Well, so I guess how long have you known you've had misophonia?
It's been it's 2019, right? Okay. It's been about like 5 years. I was about 14 when I was diagnosed, 13, 14, kind of that age. So it's actually hasn't been that long.
So was that like an official diagnosis from
audiology? Yeah, I remember I remember my dad that summer I had like been super antisocial and sound was really bothering me. I didn't know what it was. I just felt like an alien. But I remember like walking into the living room and he was just like, "Well, guess what? Guess what your mom found?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, we found misophonia." So that's kind of how we came to know the name. But then we got in contact with Dr. Patty, who was the only audiologist in Colorado who knew about misophonia and could like diagnose it. So I was diagnosed, I don't remember the date, but it was like right before school started, my 8th grade year, which was like 2014.
Mm-hmm. And Dr. Patty was the one, I think she was presenting she was kind of a keynote at the convention, I believe.
Yeah, she was.
Okay.
She's like one of the audiologists. Yeah, so she's awesome. I love her.
Yeah, that's great. And so you've been working with her since then for like 5 years now?
Yeah, basically. I've also been working with a therapist, Dee Dee Woodman, who was supposed to be at the convention, but she got sick, so she...
And so did you know, did it come on all of a sudden that summer, or was it something that was kind of creeping up and you just weren't sure what to call it?
Yeah, well, I feel like memory-wise, misophonia has messed with my memory as far as like what happened when I was younger.
Oh, how so? Yeah.
I don't know. It's just like I feel like when I was younger, I could remember things. Like when I was like 13 or whatever, before I really like was diagnosed with misophonia, I felt like, I'm fine. Like this is great. I can remember everything, and like in fact, I would like annoy my friends by having like specific details of like what happened in the past. But then after I had misophonia, I think my brain was spending so much time working on coping and like, just being triggered in general that I don't know, some of those memories, I'm sure I still have them, but it just takes like effort for me to like dig them out. So I'd say like looking back on my life, I think I've probably always had it just because I'm like a sensitive person in general. But I'd say it like really came to light that summer because my grandma was diagnosed with cancer, actually. So it was kind of like, in the conference when it was talking about like trauma and stuff as one of the causes or correlations to like how it can be misdiagnosed. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I think my first it first kind of getting worse, because the whole summer I was being very uh, dissociative and not wanting to deal with the situation because she was in hospice. So
Mm-hmm.
she was in a hospice at our house. Sorry, I didn't explain that, but she was in hospice at our house. So then when she passed, I was woken up pretty early by my mom. And so I watched her die, and I think some of the noises that were involved in that triggered my misophonia to be at the level it is now. But that's just kind of something I've talked with my therapist about, because the more I get to know my misophonia in a sense, the more I'm like, oh, maybe this is why it occurred, or I think it was just a conglomerate of things, me going through puberty, me having to deal with something very heavy, and then having like a rough home situation. So I think it was a lot of stress.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, we all know how stress exacerbates these things. And from that summer, did triggers start to expand to other types of triggers? Did it start to just kind of grow?
Yeah, yeah. So after seventh grade, I cut my hair. Weirdly enough, I just remember that being a factor into change of life. I cut into a pixie cut from it being really long,
Yeah.
and I remember at least that was after my grandma was diagnosed. So I cut my hair and donated it, and then that summer, as she was going through her hospice situation and kind of slowly degrading in a sense. I was watching her do that. At the same time, I didn't really go outside at all, and I couldn't be around my parents or my family for more than 10 minutes. And I was always down in the basement, and I noticed that whenever I was around my mom, it was really angering me. I had a lot of anger issues. I would lash out.
Mm,
I would hit my mom, which I'm not proud of, but
mm.
unfortunately, that's kind of what happens
Yeah, well, you were
sometimes.
dealing with stuff and you weren't sure what to do
Yeah, for
sometimes.
sure. And then it really, after I was diagnosed, I think I started connecting the whole, oh, it's what I'm hearing.
Mm,
Because when I was in class, I noticed that, at least when I had my seashells on, I noticed it was so much better. And it only really bothered me when kids would do certain things. So I had this friend group that I had known for a while, and they were super awesome. But eighth grade, everyone's already formed their little posse. They've done
yeah,
all
cliques. Hmm.
yeah, but they just saw me changing drastically, and they didn't really know what to do. So they started kind of pushing me aside or not being the best friend to me, while I was kind of figuring out what my triggers were. And usually it's my worst triggers, heavy breathing, but it kind of formed into more triggers as I was involved in this stressful situation in middle
Yeah.
school. So more of the classic gum and pen and all those.
Right. So the sounds of school really
Yeah,
become part of your triggers.
and you could see it in my work. You could see it. My grades weren't great in eighth grade, whereas in seventh grade I think they were better. So um,
Gotcha. And around that time you were starting to work with Dr. Patty and maybe some other folks. What were they doing for you? Were they giving you the hardware or other coping mechanisms?
yeah, so Dr. Patty, I was really interacting with her a lot at the beginning, just because she's very audiology based.
Yeah.
But psychologically, that part of misophonia, I was passed on to Dee Dee, which she's a therapist. So I started going to therapy with Dee Dee, and we started working on the relationship with my mom at first, just because it had it had drastically affected my relationship with my parents,
Hmm.
because they
Hmm.
were my main trigger, and they couldn't understand that. And at the same time, my other grandma, in February of 2015, which was 6 months after my other grandma, she passed. So that put a lot of stress on the family in general. So I really relied on when I saw Dr. Patty, I would like update her, and she would give me, fix my seashells, because I usually went there to like get adjustments of white noise, because I really didn't like brown noise. I think I liked pink, no, or no, I liked brown noise, but I didn't like pink noise. So she just deleted pink noise off the thing because I was tired of scrolling through them. But then with Dee Dee, she kind of did the other side of like, starting to work on like, like when you were triggered, like what is your thought process? So a lot of the coping mechanisms turned into like listening to, soft music, but at the same time, doing that whole mental process of like, it's not going to hurt me, and like detaching the sound from the person.
The kind of CBT kind of stuff, I guess. Sounds
Yeah,
like.
we did DBT too, later on, like in high school. But
So
I didn't.
CBT is cognitive behavioral therapy. What's
Yeah,
DBT?
DBT is, wait, no, it's not DBT. What was the one they were talking about where it was like the electronic one where it has different signals and your eyes move back and forth?
Oh, I don't know. So it's so yeah, why don't you just describe it? So that was
Yeah, so
electrics.
elect like electroid, like something with a D and then training or
Mm-hmm.
something like
Mm-hmm.
that. They kind of discussed it at the conference, but basically, or they had a few presentations on it. Basically, what she did was I had my hands in my lap, one
Yeah.
on, so right on left, or right on right, left on left, as far as like hands on legs. And then these little she put this device in my hand, so it was kind of like a squeeze tube, but it didn't squeeze, it was just shaped like a teardrop, and it was gray. I don't know, I'm describing the color, but it would beep. So it didn't beep as like sound, but it would vibrate from hand to hand.
Mm-hmm.
And so she would talk about, or we would go through like my like trauma, or misophonia stuff as it was like vibrating. And so when it vibrated, I was supposed to move my eyes from like which one it was. So I'd close my eyes and it would vibrate to the left. So I'd move my eyes to the left and then right. So and you could change the pace on it. So I
Mm-hmm.
didn't really like it super fast. So I kind of had it slow, but we would do that, and kind of get to some of the issues of misophonia and the relationship with my mom, and like I think that therapy more helped me get over the, like, not get over, but like, I guess improve my mental relationship with the situation where I watched my grandma die,
Yeah.
just because like I had a lot of like anger towards my mom, and like I have a lot of like grief for that situation,
Mm-hmm.
because like everyone grieves differently, and the way my mom and I grieve is very different. So we clashed on that aspect of like I didn't want to talk about it, and she always wanted to talk about it. So, and it was like a tough subject for me because I just related it to this like sound. Like whenever I hear that specific tone and like sound of what I heard, it just I almost like flash back in a sense to those emotions. So I think it's gotten better with that treatment, as far as like I'm not mad at like my mom anymore for like waking me up at 7 a.m., because like
Mm-hmm.
she didn't know I didn't want to like witness that. And I was too young to like vocalize my discomfort of the situation. So there was a lot of like forgiveness and growth with that treatment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But eventually I just didn't want to do it anymore. I'm not sure why. I can't remember the exact reason, but um,
You didn't want to do the treatment anymore, or yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
because I would come into therapy and she'd be like, "Oh, you want to do EBT or whatever today?" And I'd say, "No, I don't want to do it." Like, I think after a while it kind of got like too deep for me. I
Mm-hmm.
think I think I could probably do it again, but at that time in high school, I was just kind of wanting to focus more on like just talking about issues that were like occurred.
Right. Right. Current issues with your parents or whatnot.
Yeah, because you can only spend so much mental energy on the past at a
Yeah.
time.
Right. And was it so it was like with your mom it was yeah, there was the stuff that happened in the past about her. Was it that you could tell like some the tone of her voice that it reminded you, I guess, of something you didn't want to think about? Is that was that kind of the
No,
trigger, or was it
no,
like a
actually,
breathing kind of stuff?
yeah, no, my mom is a really loud breather,
Gotcha. Okay.
so
Okay.
so
Yeah.
that did not help.
Yeah. 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 Okay. And what about your dad too, or siblings and once?
Okay. Yeah. So my brother graduated high school that summer that we did hospice for my grandma. So he
Mm.
was headed off to college when I went to eighth grade. So he did not interact at all with the misophonia side of me. So he would come home into this like stressful, tense situation that my
He's
parents
like,
and I
what
were
is
kind of.
going on
Yeah,
here?
literally. He was so like he did not want any part of it. And
Yeah.
he would always tell me like mind over matter, Laurel. You always say you can't do it, but you can, and at the time I was like, screw you, bro. Like you have no
Mm.
idea what's happening.
Hmm.
But I think I actually got a tattoo with him. I have a can and he has like an eye. So
Uh-huh.
it's like a I can thing. And before I was like pretty adamant about like I literally can't control it. But I think I've decided that like I can do what I can do about certain situations, and it's not a bad thing to have a positive mindset about misophonia because oftentimes we get down in our own brains of like
Hmm.
I'll never get better, like this is the worst, like no one
No,
understands.
yeah, it takes over your focus from whatever else you want to think about. And yeah,
Yeah.
all those thoughts come in. And so yeah, getting your mind off it is one way to do it. And so what were your kind of coping mechanisms then at the time, other than going to therapy?
Um, Man, I feel like a lot of it was just like psychological, like
Yeah, just trying to think more positive about it and maybe
yeah. Like I think I had a bad relationship with it for a while as far as like I'm pretty like religious Christian wise, and I think a lot of the time I was like, oh God, like gave this to me and he
oh
hates
yeah.
me,
Hmm.
so I had some anger towards him in a sense. But I don't know, like I think I had a couple, I want to say like interactions with my faith that really changed my perspective on things.
Mm.
So around the same time, actually, when I was like 13, I went to this like, church, and this kind of integrates the art aspect of it. And
Yeah.
I went with my grandma Joyce, who died like 7 months later. But we went to the church, and they were doing like a creative conference. So they were like saying how you can like integrate your art, with your faith and kind of like doing art for Jesus and stuff. So I kind of I went there and I honestly like it changed my life because I felt like I had a purpose. I was like, wow, like I'm an artist. Like God gave me this gift. But then like, however many months later, it was misophonia. So I had such a high of like um, this high kind of spiritual like um, happiness and for my future, like I could look forward to something, because my mom was diagnosed with like bipolar before I was born, so I'd kind of grown up with this, different mom and this different situation where like I had to be the parent, and at the same
Oh.
time, my dad was like super, you know, he's super loving and caring, but he's kind of more of the passive type. Like at the time, he didn't really want to get involved in the situation. But I guess after this experience that I had, I was like, I could see my family changing. I could see, I could see the future being super bright. And, my grandma had been such a great influence in my life. And I was just like on this high, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And to come down so hard, like come crashing with the whole misophonia thing, I kind of put the art on the side for a while and started focusing on like, oh, I don't know what to do. Like, like trying to just get through every day emotionally. Because every day in middle school, I would come home crying. Like, I don't remember a day where I wasn't like physically and emotionally just
Hmm.
exhausted from the day. Like, I would come home and I would just like be in my room. I wouldn't, like, I guess it's stereotypical for teenagers to be in their room, but I literally just didn't want to be around triggers because I had gone to school the whole day with triggers. So, but like after I started exploring that, like, you know, like God's got my back, and you know, my family has my back, even though they don't understand, and kind of trying to boost my morality and focus on my health. And I became a vegetarian and all this stuff, and that really started to improve everything. And I think it got even better when I started to do art again, because that's kind of my way of like, my mind heals itself when I do art. It's kind of weird to think about, but I honestly think like therapy through art is like the thing that has helped me at least somewhat the most, besides like talking through things and like, you know, praying about it.
So as you got into high school then, and you're going regularly to therapy, was that around when you connected back to art and started to use your creative talents?
Yeah.
And that helped a lot through. Did you end up going to college too?
Yeah, I'm in college
Okay.
now, so
Okay, yeah, gotcha.
I'm a freshman. So
And so your grades, did you find your grades were getting better as you were doing more therapy and more art?
yeah, I would say so. And plus, I think with misophonia, a lot of it's like routine. You know, like when I first got into high school, like freshman year was probably the worst year like ever
Oh
in my
yeah.
life. Besides like all the stuff that happened, it's like when you come down from a really big high in general,
Mm-hmm.
and then like you're kind of getting out of the crash. I think that's like the worst little section, because you're like, oh, I was just down there, but look, I don't know where to go from here. Like I don't remember what up is, you know, I don't remember. So I think freshman year was just trying to create a space for myself in high school, because it was really hard as well in high school, as because you're adjusting to a new environment. And I think with misophonia especially, I've noticed that, because it's happening right now in college, is that
Yeah.
when you're introduced to a new environment with new people and they don't know anything about you, it's very lonely and very hard to build up that community to like not only support yourself, but just have them see past your misophonia and just see you, you know. I had a really hard time like making friendships, because a lot of my friends at the beginning, at least freshman year, like they'd be like, why are you so bothered by whatever we do? And some kids in class, you know, they would bully me. They'd be like, oh, does this bother you? And
Yeah.
and then they'd like chew gum in my ear, like whatever.
Uh,
So it was the worst, because you're around immature people, and
that's
but
in
like
college freshman year or high school?
high school.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna
But
say if that happened in college, that would be disturbing. It's
yeah,
disturbing enough
no.
in high school, but
Yeah. Yeah, no, now college is like, oh, I have to live with people and they haven't known me for like my
hmm
whole life, you know, and they have to interact with my misophonia, you know.
the thing about college, though, well, speaking of looking at positive things, there's so many more buildings and rooms and places to kind of escape to. I feel like in college
Yeah, for sure.
than in like a high school when it's basically, I mean, some of them look like prisons and you can't really get out.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Mine literally looked like a prison. It was funny.
and so, so in college now, what are you doing in college, by the way? Just curious. So what did you end up choosing?
I'm majoring in psychology, because
Hmm.
kind of what you were talking about earlier, I want to do art therapy and kind of start a little community building place where people can come and do art to help with whatever needs help psychologically.
Yeah, that's fantastic, and it's got to be kind of inspired by your experiences.
Yeah, for sure. I like I've had so many experiences like growing up and everything, and especially with misophonia, I've had a new insight to life that, you know, is unique and different as far as how I can like reach back out to people, you know.
Have you met other than the convention? Have you along going through school? Have you met other people with misophonia?
Yeah, I have. My friend Carrie actually had it before me. She had it
Mm,
in middle school, but she has had it for a lot longer than I have, and it's more mild than mine. So,
mm,
in high school, like we were in a class together our senior year, and it was kind of nice because she'd have carrots with her, and I'd be like, hey Carrie, like, is it okay if you don't eat those like today, in
Yeah.
this class? And she's just like, yeah, no, that's totally fine, Laurel. So it was nice to at least have that kind of sense of connection.
Well, was it milder in terms of she had less triggers, or did you guys react differently to similar triggers?
Yeah, I think she has less triggers, but as well, it's like not as uh, intense of like a trigger.
Mm,
There's the scale, as far as like agitation goes. I think like she got to a place where it annoyed her, but she's so quiet that she never said anything. Whereas like mine was pretty bad, and I couldn't do anything besides like say like, hey, do you mind stopping? Or like I had to interact with a situation where she's done a pretty good job there at high school. I don't know if
mm,
it's a good job, but she's done a pretty good, like, good for her as far as like not being super like physically agitated, because I feel like sometimes I obviously look affected, whereas like
yeah,
you couldn't tell with her, so
yeah.
that
And
was
did you
kind of an
guys,
interesting thing.
yeah. And you guys help? Did you guys help each other out, like talk through situations, or just kind of like get it off your chest in certain situations?
Yeah, in certain situations for sure.
Mhm.
But like I said, she's pretty reserved and quiet, and
Okay.
we weren't as close as we were in like elementary school as far
Mm,
as like high school goes, just because we're like different people. But I also had like people on the internet kind of to go to, and I met this girl named Stephanie through Dee Dee, and so she was a person like I hung out for a while, um, and we talked through it, and it was really helpful because she had had it for longer. Kind of having like a miso-mentor was kind of
oh,
super
it's a
cool.
good term. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, right now I'm kind of a miso-mentor for a 9-year-old girl, so it's kind of a come around.
And did that connection happen with the 9-year-old through your therapist, or you found her some other way randomly?
I found her through church. I was in my church. There was a girl named oh my gosh, why can't I think of her name? The 9-year-old's name is Avery, but her big sister, I was friends with her,
Mm,
and so when I met her sister, I was like, oh, I have misophonia, and she's like, oh no way, like my sister has that, and so we kind of got connected through that. So I'll take her out on like kind of mini dates, like going to the movies, or a matinee, and kind of strategizing, sound management as far as like, oh, we can sit on the side and in the back, and we can bring our own snacks and put the snacks into like a non-crinkly type of thing. So it's kind of been cool to give her my tips right now in college. It's like I feel like I'm a freshman in high school again, because I have all these new people, and I have to
hmm.
like, re-explain this funny to them, and it's really exhausting to like, upkeep that. And then you'll interact with some people who are just unwilling to accommodate you and have some crazy like mind over matter kind of beliefs that you have to tiptoe over. So I'd say I haven't like gone back at like square one, but it's definitely another like hurdle to figure out and try to fix.
Yeah, I guess there's, I mean, less people that are coming from like your previous school, I guess. It's just a
Yeah.
lot of new people. And some of the classes are like 200 people, could be,
Yeah, I mean, I go to a smaller school. It's only like 3,000 people, so I have
hmm,
smaller classes, which is super nice. So
hmm.
classes don't really bother me. It's just like the whole living situation has been super stressful.
Gotcha. So you got like few roommates then in an apartment?
Yeah, yeah. So I live
Yeah.
in like a suite style apartment. So there's like 4 girls total, and then like a living room.
Hmm.
So I just moved actually, like right after the convention, or like 2 weeks after the convention, because earlier my roommates were like unwilling to. Well, they were accommodating in some sense, but they just stayed up late and they played the TV really loud, and I was like right next to the living room, so it just wasn't panning out well because
Mm.
they were also like I remember one of my roommates told me like, I don't get how like you could have a disability. Like, why don't you just like push through it? Like, misophonia doesn't seem like it's like super like affecting your life or something like that. And I was just like, it was really annoying because I was like, I've known you for like 3 months or 2 months, and you already have this like opinion about like my past and my life, and it was just kind of frustrating.
Yeah, I think everyone listening to this could understand. I mean, can can understand or has met somebody like that. That's kind of very common reaction, unfortunately. Or a
Mm-hmm.
lot of us keep it bottled up because we just assume that is kind of the standard reaction to what we have.
Yeah. Yeah, like I remember just like calling my parents because it was honestly really stressful the first few months because we had a roommate who was borderline personality disorder for the first 2 weeks,
Mm,
and she was mentally unwell, I will say, as
mm-hmm,
far as like suicide goes. So we had to like call the cops on her a couple times,
mm-hmm.
and so that was like super stressful. So that was not a beneficial start to
Yeah,
introducing myself to my new roommates because it was very fast and quick of like I was like crying and they're like, why are you crying? And I was like, because what she's saying, what our old roommate was saying, kind of triggered some past like trauma and memories. So
yeah,
like that was super hard to like hurdle over. So I'd call my parents and, I'd say like, well, my roommates are saying this about me, and they're like they're saying all these things and they're trying to be nice, but they're just have this like mind over matter aspect of it that and they think that my misophonia trumps all their issues, so they're like comparing my trauma. And so
right.
but like my dad said, and I really love my dad, but I was kind of surprised that he said this. He was um like, Laurel, you need to stop like uh, thinking the best of people in terms of your misophonia. And that like kind of hit me because I was just kind of like, I mean, he's right, but like all I know is like, oh, it's okay. Like maybe these people will like change and maybe it'll work out. But sometimes it's just people aren't in a place to, be your receiving of who you are, and that's just how it is. So it's kind of a sad reality that I've learned, but at the same time, I can protect myself better now in the sense of, you know, okay, I can assume the best in people, but I can't assume the best in people as far as like understanding my misophonia. Like, it's kind of nice to know that, like, okay, no one's like, except for the people who have misophonia, no one's gonna like completely understand it. So just like having that, consistent view is kind of more healthy than like constantly
Mm-hmm.
being let down.
And let's talk about maybe your art a bit more,
Mm-hmm.
since that's been a bright light, I guess, in your life, or at least
Mm-hmm.
a great form of personal therapy, and it looks like it's gonna be a great career for you. Oh, and so you had the pieces at the convention. Were those recent pieces? Were they going back? Were they kind of created when you were going through um, situations during high school? And tell me about the origins of some of those.
I think so. Some of them kind of happened like in the midst of it, but they weren't like misophonia inspired.
Hmm.
Um, like I think I had one there with like, oh, I didn't bring that one. Never mind. I'll just talk about the ones that were there. The one where there was a mountain and a girl was like walking up on it, and she was like
Oh yeah,
holding an ear,
yeah.
and electricity was creating a storm behind her. I think that was like a transition piece for me because I had always wanted to do art about misophonia, but mostly I'd done art like that had definitely helped me in a sense of like healing around misophonia. But it wasn't like, misophonics couldn't look at it and be like, oh, yes, that is inspired by misophonia. And I really wanted to kind of showcase that because every time I looked up misophonia on the internet, it was all these like WebMD articles, or if you clicked images, it would be people with their hands over their ears or people like screaming, and it was very like dramatic. And I was like,
Hmm.
and I just kind of was mad because I was like, that's kind of stereotyping like us. I mean, it's in a sense, it's like, yeah, I feel like I am like screaming internally, but I
Well, it's
felt
not very.
like,
It's very superficial kind of
yeah,
of representing it. So yeah.
yeah, yeah. Like as far as I go, I'm a pretty deep thinking person, and I really like to analyze like emotions, and that's why I'm a psychology major. But
Mm-hmm.
like looking back on like my situation and everything that happened, like with my parents and my grandmas and like misophonia, I thought I had learned some things, and I wanted to be able to like express that through painting. So that the first one that was like a transition piece kind of was I made in my junior year in a class, and that was super cool because I was like nobody's knows gonna everybody thought it was like a fetus that she was carrying, so I was excited for people with misophonia to understand that that painting was like the journey of misophonia.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because at least in my sense, I'm really hard on myself. So, um, like people, I guess when people do like affect me and my misophonia, I'm like I want to cater to them. Like I really don't want them to feel like I'm feeling, or I don't want them to be walking on eggshells, or So I just that piece was kind of referencing the fact that like I have misophonia and I'm like carrying this ear up this mountain. But like behind me, I'm unaware of all like the storm it's creating, even though I think I'm like walking into this bright light. So it's kind of like the the irony of misophonia in a sense of like, you know, we are very sensitive, and like our disorder can cause us to be selfish, but we're doing it for survival, but the people behind us don't like recognize that. And so it kind of creates this like chaos. So I was kind of hinting at that.
Yeah, no, that's kind of one of my. I'm looking at it right now because I was taking pictures from the at the convention. It's beautiful. It's probably one of my favorite pieces there. There's another one. Now that I look at it, it's obviously like it's kind of like walking on eggshells, where you're sitting between two halves of an eggshell.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that one a little bit? What are you sitting on there?
Yeah. So just to preface, I did an independent study for my senior year
Hmm.
in high school. So I decided to do because I was supposed to have like a theme around what I was doing. So decided to do like four or three paintings around surrounding misophonia. So that one I put themes to them before I like painted them, so I'll just say the theme. But
Hmm.
that one, the eggshell one, was a theme of like misophonia and relationships.
Yeah,
So,
I get it.
um,
I get you.
uh,
Yeah, a lot of it is. I mean, yeah, we all know that it's. We kind of walk around. Well, we walk around eggshells because we don't want to hear triggers, but
yeah,
other people, or I feel like I'm making other people walk on eggshells around me,
yeah,
which is that's when the shame and the guilt kind of
yeah,
creep into our psyche.
yeah, for sure. Because the person sitting in the puddle of golden goo,
That's
I
what that is. Okay.
yeah, I kind of created that character. Yeah, I would say yeah, it's like based off me, but mostly because I didn't want anyone to pose for a reference besides me.
Yeah.
So that character I kind of made of like if misophonia could be like seeing, I did that with like big ears, and then
Mm-hmm.
so that's kind of seen in the picture. So she has big ears, but it's kind of like what I felt when I was like freshly out of the womb of misophonia, I guess you could say, like the diagnosis, because it was
Oh
like
yeah.
it was like immediately I was anticipating like looking up at this foot that was like crushing me. So I wanted to do a kind of thing of like people walking on eggshells, but in a sense it's like also walking on like me.
Well, kind of also reminds of what we were talking about, where the roller coaster, where you probably kind of felt almost reborn going up to highs, then you just get crushed.
Yeah, for sure. Like you can kind of see that the girl in the painting looks hopeful, kind of
Yeah,
like
very
like
young.
anticipating.
Hmm.
Yeah, like super
Optimistic.
innocent.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like to have this multicolored foot coming down was almost a sense of like, oh, whoa, what's happening? but then like once the reality comes, you know, like the halves will be crushed, and like I don't know if like that character will be crushed, but it's just kind of like that tension
Yep.
of yeah. So it's hard because you can work so hard on a relationship like my mom and I did, but you know, sometimes you can fall back to, you know, the basic, like what's gonna happen, like we're walking eggshells around each other, like this is not good. You know.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a learning process of like how to have relationships with people for sure.
Yep. And then one more is the big colorful one that has I
Oh
think
yeah,
all of your old ear
headphones.
yeah, headphones on them, and I think to like a non-misophonic they'd be like kind of like this looks like some Jackson Pollock or something. But
Yeah.
as soon as you know any of us went up close, we're like, oh yeah, okay, we all have that pile.
Yeah, yeah, no, it was like all of my headphones that I used throughout high school, like all of them, like because they all broke. So
Yep.
yeah, I just used all of them and like made a little ear. That was probably the most fun to do, just because I could like let myself like express the chaoticness because I'm very like a realist painter. So it was nice for a second to kind of be like, oh, I can do like whatever I want.
Yep. Yeah. No, it's beautiful. Do you want to maybe plug like I don't know your oh, have a way for people to contact you if they want to see more or learn more about your artwork or
Yeah,
about art in
um,
general
yeah.
as a way to cope?
Yeah, for sure. I guess my Instagram would be at actions.echo, and it's like actions.that.echo.
Yep.
And that's like my art Instagram. I do have like a more personal one, but I'll just like link that one. And
Yep.
then yeah, that's basically it so far.
Yeah, and I'll
I
post links to those so
yeah,
people can just like click on them.
yeah,
I just asked it here just because that's what you do on podcasts. You're like, oh, how do
yeah.
you want to be contacted? But I
Yeah,
might
I
even
mean,
just cut this out. Who cares?
yeah,
But yeah,
people can also like email me with the email like ljthompson22 at outlook.com. Like if people want to email me too. I know I'm thinking about starting like a YouTube channel and kind of documenting and talking like a story time, like kind of documenting my college process of coping, but also like stuff that's happened in the past and like doing my art for sure. Because um, so I'm just going to mention it real quick, but some of the two other ones that were displayed, like the girl on top of the world with the headphones
yes,
on,
yes, yes.
yeah, that one's my favorite. So
Oh
I'm
yeah, please
thinking
talk about
maybe,
that. I just picked a
yeah,
couple just for time purposes, but
no,
I was
you're
staring
good.
at that one. I was staring at that one because yeah, please talk about that because there's she's sitting on top of the world and there's
Yeah,
the kind of like audio waveforms somewhere and they're up in the sky.
yeah.
Yeah, talk about that one, please.
Yeah, so that one is called the Desolation of Loneliness, I think, or the Sound of Loneliness, something like that. And it basically is like the loneliness that comes with misophonia is like the theme. And so above the girls, it says in Morse code and like speech waves, it's like um, all I hear is, or something like, all I hear is sound, but all I want is like silence, something like that. So
Mm.
it's just kind of like we're hearing, because it's like the headphones that she's wearing are plugged into the world, you know, like we hear the world all the time and we're never like allowed to not hear it, you know. So it's kind of like the hinting at like, oh, there's so many sounds in the world and sometimes it's so lonely even though all these like sounds are happening, you know. So that one's, I want to make stickers of that one.
Yeah, please do. And yeah, love to, I'll definitely love to plug those on our
Yeah,
Instagram too. Um, that's amazing. And then do you want to talk about there was that other one with the girl who's holding is she bleeding from her ear or something's coming out
yeah,
of her ear? Okay.
yeah, that's blood. So that's a self portrait. That one was before I included it in the independent study, but that was
Mm-hmm.
kind of before um, I drew it out actually like my sophomore year, and then I finished painting it my senior year. But that one's a self portrait, so that one's like the closest one to me, you
Mm-hmm.
know, the most personal one, just because it's a self portrait and also like the bleeding from the ear. I took the picture actually, the reference picture for that, what I used. I took that picture like after I had like a meltdown, like I was
Yeah.
crying. So like I took that picture, so it has a lot of emotion in it, and it's just like if people could see misophonia, it'd either be like really big ears or it'd just be like this like blood that's coming out of the ear, you know?
Yeah.
So I just kind of wanted to visualize like what it'd be like if misophonia was like physically shown.
And did you took a picture after you having a meltdown? Did you obviously you weren't bleeding from your ear, but did you did you do like were you actually taking a picture of your ear, kind of like to kind
Yeah,
of
no,
capture that moment, or was it kind of coincidence?
no, I think it was more coincidence because a lot of times with the paintings I have in my brain, they sit around for like months. Like I have one right now that I'm like, I need to paint that, but
Yeah.
it'll probably sit around for a couple months till like I've reached the point where I think I've like healed in that sense of like, okay, I'm ready to paint this. And
Yeah.
that's the kind of the case with like all the misophonia ones. Is like I was ready to like finally touch on it, you know. So I think in the moment after my breakdown, I was like, well, I'm crying and I've been thinking about doing this painting of like the bleeding from the ear. So I just like took the picture. So it was kind of like, it was kind of
Hmm.
funny of like happenstance of like, oh, well, I'm having a meltdown. So why not use it as a reference photo?
Well, that is a great example of positive thinking.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I'll definitely post that one too. Yeah, so I guess we're kind of running up
Running
against
out of time.
time, but
Yeah.
is there anything else you want to talk about in terms of like an art you're working on, or any tips maybe? As you know, you seem to be an experienced miso-mentor.
Yeah.
Anything you want to tell to folks who are, especially young to young, maybe young adult folks, because they
Yeah.
seem to get lost in the shuffle, who
Yeah.
are maybe just discovering or just trying to figure out how to cope with this new environment they're in.
Hmm. Well, I've been thinking about this a lot as far as misophonia and young adult, I guess you could say. But I've been thinking about this a lot in like at least college. Is just if there was a way that we could start, at least in the misophonia community, to talk about it openly without bringing in the negativity that comes with it. Just in a sense, because I've had experience with like talking to people who have misophonia and like, being in group chats, and like I have this amino that I run. Um, it's the misophonia amino. If you download the amino app and just type in misophonia, it should come up. I've noticed that like it's a great space for us to like complain about the triggers of the day, but I
Yeah.
want to try to integrate like the positivity of it, or in a sense like try to make it more of a space where people can come and not expect to re-interact with all those triggers and all those emotions of misophonia. There's spaces where you can do that and it can be like great and everything, but I think sometimes misophoniacs need to get together and just be without misophonia.
Yeah.
You know, just be together without it being like all about misophonia, which I think is like you can talk about misophonia for days with a misophoniac, but I think it's also important to like, especially at the conference, to you know become friends with these people and
Yep.
have this community. And it's more than just like misophonia because our whole lives are about misophonia. So I guess my encouragement or like my challenge to kind of try to discover and poke at is like for people to be, you know, in a community of misophonia without misophonia sometimes. Because I think
Yeah.
that'd be like healthy for everyone.
Absolutely healthy. Yeah, and when I go to a convention, it's almost like I don't even need to really talk to the person I'm standing in front of. So we already know our shared experiences. Let's
Yeah. Yeah.
just
Just
kind of
be together.
just be.
Yeah. Because
And mhm.
when we're together, at least with misophonia, we don't have to like walk on eggshells in a sense. I feel like it's still there, but there's
Yeah,
this like sense of like love and like recognition of each other without having to say anything.
yeah, exactly. And yeah, I just feel like there has been kind of in the it's something in the zeitgeist where people want to do more meetups. There is maybe as a prototype, there is a UCLA seems to have a misophonia support group that some students started. I don't know if you know about that, but I would love to see that at university campuses all across the country.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
And I'm trying to get that to get that started kind of later on in like the work in the workplace with like
Yeah.
HR departments kind of like talking about it more or
Hmm.
but anyways, that's separate. But yeah,
Yeah.
like a college club, like a college club, just like any other thing about knitting
Hmm.
or politics or whatever. I think that would be great.
I agree. The disability service here at Fort Lewis, I've been talking to them, and the head person, since it's
Hmm.
such a small college, she's like, "Yep, we have one other misophoniac," and I'm like, "I need to go meet them." Like,
Yeah,
yeah, like even if there's two of us, like I want to start a club.
yeah. No, and there's probably more. I mean, like your friend who kind of bottled it up. There's probably a lot of
Yeah,
people who are bottling up or don't have they haven't their parents didn't find that article yet,
yeah,
and so
yeah. There's a lot more people who have it than like people like
oh
think.
yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah, for sure. Cool. Well, thanks, Laurel. Yeah, this is a great, great to hear about the back. I met you at the convention, but it was great to hear kind of the background of your condition and everything you've experienced. I think a lot of people listening will get a lot out of it. Who may have gone through similar situations,
Yeah,
and as we know, there are a bunch of people in college who I think will be walking around campus looking for other misophoniacs. I hope.
yeah, for sure. Um, well, I hope everything I said does help people out, and I'm so glad that I get to be a part of this podcast. This is new and fun.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to check out the show notes for links to her Instagram and contact info. I've been getting lots of photos of people getting their Misophonia podcast stickers, and it's great to see. So please DM me anywhere on social or email me at hello@misophoniapodcast.com, and I can send you more free ones. Just send me your mailing address. Apparently, they can take a while to arrive, especially when going overseas from the U.S. The music is by Moby, and until next time, wishing you peace and quiet.